can't believe that in 2025, this is a story that I am reporting on. The U.S. Department of Justice has just ended a school desegregation order in Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana, an order that has been in place since 1966. Basically what the DOJ is saying is that because this school district integrated back in 1975, that this is a relic, an archaic rule that's no longer needed. Now, for your edification, there are 130 school districts throughout the South that are still under similar desegregation orders, and this one is just the first of all of those that they're planning on ending. Now, the concern that experts have is that by lifting these mandates, that it could roll back the progress that has been made on desegregation since the civil rights movement, and in fact lead to increased segregation, which is a completely separate video, but does actually still exist today. The bottom line is that by these laws being on the books, it doesn't hurt anybody, but by taking them off, it could. And that's where the concern comes in. Now, as always, you guys know that I love to know your thoughts and comments on these type of things, so please just be respectful as you go through them. But drop them in the comments because this is a pretty big issue. And as always, make sure to hit that follow button. But yeah, in 2025, I'm doing a video on ending desegregation orders. Insane.
Hey viewers, welcome back to the channel where we break down the stories that shape our world, one headline at a time. And today we are diving into a development that is turning heads and stirring deep concern across the country. Nearly 60 years after it began, the U.S. Department of Justice has officially ended the 1966 school desegregation order in Louisiana, a move that signals more than just a legal decision. It's the closing of a chapter in civil rights history, but some are warning it could also be the opening of a dangerous new one as more of these decades-old desegregation cases fall away. Many are asking, why are we witnessing the quiet return of Jim Crow-era divides in our education system, and how is the public responding to what some are calling a rollback of hard-won progress? In this video, we are breaking down what the DOJ's decision really means, the ripple effects it could cause across the country, and why this story matters now more than ever. If you are new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we are just getting started.
Now they're undoing civil rights protections and nobody is talking about it. I'm angry. The Justice Department just lifted a school desegregation order in Louisiana, a court order that's been in place since 1966. And it was to make sure that Black and white children could go to school together. That's it. And these people had the audacity to call it historically wrong. Not the segregation, but the court order to end segregation in schools. And don't be fooled, this isn't about one parish or one state. This is Trump's DOJ paving the way to erase everything our elders fought for, everything they bled for, the whole civil rights movement. This is the start of it. And I'm sick of people pretending like racism isn't a thing when Black and brown children are in underfunded schools, get suspended at higher rates, treated differently. I mean, it's just, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. And I refuse to sit idly by and keep my mouth shut while they are just undoing movements, whole movements, like it's just a stack of paperwork, just throwing it out the window. And we need to stand up and talk about this because our babies deserve better. Our babies deserve a better future. I don't understand how anybody could possibly be okay with this. The denial about racism has to stop. Share this, talk about it, be loud because they are relying on our silence and our complacency, and you cannot stand by and let this happen. I wasn't even going to respond to your stupid ass comment, but silence gives hate room to grow. The comment that you just made about segregation being best for all involved, yet calling other human beings menaces, is wild. And let's be clear, that mindset isn't only hateful, it's dangerous. Segregation was never best. It was violent and dehumanizing and rooted in white supremacy. And comments like this aren't just opinions. They're a reflection of a heart full of hate and ignorance, and obviously you're fearful of others. If you truly believe that separating people by race or background makes the world a better place, then you're the problem. But my space, this space, isn't one for hate. It's for progress, equity, and for truth. And best believe, I will not stop speaking up.
The Trump DOJ just ended a decades-old desegregation order in Louisiana and called it righting a historical wrong. The historical wrong is not segregation or racism. It's the court case that tried to fix it. Back in 1966, the federal government sued a parish for refusing to desegregate its schools. And by 1975, only 11 years later, a judge said they were desegregated. But the case stayed open like many desegregation orders did across the South. This week, Trump's DOJ officially ended the case. And the Assistant Attorney General said, it's time to get America refocused on our bright future. In fact, they said that integration ended 2 generations ago. Except it did not. These desegregation orders, called consent decrees, were not random. They were created to force districts to integrate, especially because a lot of them were dragging their feet post Brown versus Board. I talked about this in this Substack a lot, but these orders do not go away until the district can prove it's eliminated the effects of segregation in practice, not on paper. And segregation, both racial and economical, are huge issues to this very day. Brown versus Board did not end it. And some schools are more segregated now than they were in the 60s. It's a disaster. The Trump DOJ isn't just ending one case. They're laying the groundwork to dismantle desegregation nationwide. The Louisiana AG has already requested more desegregation orders are dropped. She says, it's time to put the past in the past. But the past is right now, you guys! Districts that lose these orders often resegregate so fast, this rhetoric sends a very clear signal. The federal government is stepping away from its role as an equity enforcer in public education. We already knew this. It's been a mess.
So segregation's more legal, especially in the South. Just recently, a parish in Louisiana rolled back desegregation laws. The Justice Department called it a historical wrong that they needed to right. And this is already a very segregated area. If you've been to Louisiana, I've been to a ton of small towns in Louisiana. They are so segregated already because of redlining and the way things are zoned. There is a poor black side of town and there's the rich white side of town in so many different parishes all over Louisiana. And this kind of thing happening in one parish will start a domino effect in other parishes and other areas in the South to be able to justify segregating their schools. There's also an increase in private school vouchers. And if you know anything about private schools in the South, they are very white. And most of them popped up after Brown versus the Board of Education when schools became desegregated because rich people wanted to make sure that their kids could have an education without black people. And states like North Carolina are expanding their voucher programs funded by public money, taxes, to those private schools and away from public schools. One of the goals of Project 2025 is to dismantle civil rights protections. And that's what we're seeing happening all across the board. And right now we are seeing that specifically in schools in the South. And this is just the beginning.
So I have seen some creators say, I know that Black people, we said that we were resting and that we're not going to protest out in the street and that we're not going to engage. But you have to realize that once they finish causing all of this chaos and going after everybody else, they're coming after Black people next. So we need to really become engaged. This is what I have to say in response to that. As a community, we are resisting. We are protesting. We're just not out in these streets. Y'all see what happened at that May Day protest. Who did the police arrest and haul away? And they were all Black. We instead are protesting with our dollars, choosing to patronize businesses and services that respect us whenever and however we can. That's why Target is in free fall and so is Tesla. And also that's why Sinners has become one of the highest grossing original films that's come out of Hollywood in quite some time. This is an original IP from a Black couple, Ryan Coogler and his wife, Zinzi Evans, that they produced from their production company, proximity media that has an all-black cast. And as a community, we have shown out. It was mainly us that put that film at the top of the box office. And we are continually going to see it over and over again. We are showing the world that we have money that we spend. And when you disrespect us and disparage us, you're going to feel it. And the other thing about they may try to deport us next. When has this nation ever stopped fucking with black folk? I'll wait. Tell me when collectively has white America says, you know what, we're going to leave black folk alone for a while. We have always been targeted. We have always been oppressed and attacked constantly. So when folks get on here and say, we're next, when have we not been? When have we not been the target? Is situation normal? And I hate that there are many of us that underestimate us. We are still here. Despite the horrendous circumstances that we have had to exist in this nation, many of us are not only surviving but thriving. And we are creating art. And every time it's appropriated, we create new forms of expression. Ryan Coogler and his wife, they are redefining the game. We are doing what we do. We're not just being idle. I don't know where this idea is coming from that we're being idle, because we're not out in these streets protesting, which is no longer effective, if it ever was, since the civil rights movement. The only thing that protesting in the streets has ever gotten us is to be beaten and arrested and hauled off to jail, some of us injured and even killed. And it doesn't move the needle one iota. Look at April 5th and all the white folks that came out for their powwow that they called a protest, and that didn't do a single solitary thing. No, many of us, are understanding that money is the engine that makes this country go. And collectively, black people, we have a lot of it. So that's my response to people saying, well, you know, black people, we're going to be next. When have we not been on the hit list at the very top? Come on, y'all. Hey, y'all.
In a decision that has shocked many but surprised few who have been paying attention, the U.S. Department of Justice has officially ended the 1966 school desegregation order in Louisiana. That is right, nearly 6 decades after federal court intervened to dismantle the separate and unequal school systems of the Jim Crow South, the DOJ has walked away from one of its longest-standing oversight cases. Now, let's be clear. This isn't just about one court case or one parish in Louisiana. This is about a signal, a strong and sobering one, that the federal government is stepping back from the work of enforcing racial equality in public education, and more of these desegregation cases are all expected to fall in the months and years ahead. So what is really happening here? First, let's break down the basics. In 1966, the DOJ filed suit against St. Martin's Parish in Louisiana for maintaining racial segregated schools, a direct violation of the Supreme Court's landmark 1954 ruling in Brown v. Board of Education. That ruling famously declared that separate but equal has no place in American education. But like so many things in civil rights laws, enforcement didn't happen overnight. For years, the federal government monitored complexity, demanding that local districts eliminate dual systems and integrate their schools. And for decades, these court orders remained active, not because the government wanted to micromanage schools, but because without them, local officials often found their ways to sidestep the law. Fast forward to 2025, and the DOJ has now filed a motion to dismiss the case, declaring that St. Martin's Parish is in full compliance with the segregation mandate. The court agreed, and just like that, one of the last federal levels ensuring racial equality in that school system is gone. Now, what does full complacency actually look like in today's context? That is where this gets spunky. At Martin's Parish is still racial divided not by law, but by housing patterns, school zoning, and socio-economic disparities. The district may no longer explicitly separate students by race, but outcomes remain far from equal. Schools with majority black student populations often receive fewer resources, face higher teacher turnover, and report lower academic performance. All symptoms of systemic inequality desegregation orders were designed to address. The question isn't whether legal segregation exists. It doesn't, at least not officially. The question is whether equality truly exists when you remove oversight but leave the structures of inequality in place. This is the heart of the controversy. Civil rights advocates argue that the end of these desegregation orders represent a dangerous step backward, a form of state-sanctioned neglect. Without federal pressure, they say local districts have little incentive to actively maintain diversity or confront long-standing disparities, and history backs them up. Look at what happens in other districts where desegregation orders have been lifted. Studies show a clear pattern. Within a few years, schools often begin to re-segregate, sometimes rapidly. Whites fight to private schools or predominantly white public districts, shifting district lines and school choice. Policy often exacerbates divide. And let's not ignore the political backdrop here. We are in a moment where debates over education are hotter than ever. From book bans to curriculum fights to school funding battles, racial dynamics are at the core of many of these conflicts. Ending federal oversight now is in this climate feels like a legal milestone and more like a retreat. Even the language being used in official filings raises eyebrows. The DOJ's motion emphasized Unitarian statute, a legal term meaning the district has done enough to dismantle its due system. But what does enough mean? Enough to no longer be sued, or enough to ensure every student, regardless of race, receive equal opportunity and resources? Because those hasn't the same thing. Let's take a step back and think historically. We often remember Brown v. Board as the turning point that fixed American schools, but in reality, desegregation was a long, painful, and often incomplete process. In many places, it was meant to outright resistance, from protest to school closure to the infamous massive resistance movement. And even where progress was made, it was hard-won, often through federal lawsuit, DOJ intervention, and sustained activism. So when we remove those mechanisms, we are not just declaring victory, we are risking a return to the very condition those mechanisms were created to fix. Now, there are those who argue that after 50 plus years, it's reasonable to move on, that districts shouldn't be under perpetual federal scrutiny, that local control should be restored, and yes, there is a case to be made for allowing school boards to govern independently, assuming they act equitably. But that is a big assumption, because we are still living with the consequences of racial equality in education, from underfunded schools in biased discipline practice to the school to prison pipeline. The legacy of desegregation is alive and well, and it doesn't end just because the court says no. Also, let's also talk about the symbolic weight of this decision. When the federal government steps away from civil rights enforcement, it sends a message not just to school districts but to the country. That message is, we are done here, that equality in education is no longer a federal priority, that the jobs is finished even when so many signs suggest otherwise. And that message resonates. It emboldens those who want to roll back progress. It weakens the position of those still fighting for educational justice, and it chips away at public trust in the promise of equal opportunity. People are reacting, some with outrage, others with resignation. On social media, you will see comparison to Jim Crow, concern about creeping segregation, and calls for renewed activism. Because for many, this isn't just a court case, it's a warning sign. The civil rights movement didn't end in the 60s, it evolved, and in many ways the front lines have moved into places like a school board meetings and zoning hearings, into debate about voucher charter schools and standardized testing. The struggle for equality is ongoing, and removing federal oversight doesn't erase that. So where do we go from here? We need more than just nostalgia for past victories. We need renewed vigilancy. That means communities holding local officials accountable, parents staying engaged, advocates pushing for transparency in school funding, discipline data, teacher distribution, all these things that shape students' experience. Because if the federal government is stepping back, someone else needs to step up, and make no mistake, more desegregation orders will fall. This isn't a one-off, it's a trend. The only question is whether we as a country will allow that to mean the end of the road for school integration, or if we adapt, recommit, and find new ways to fight for fairness. So as we watch more of this decision unfold, ask yourself, what kind of education system are we leaving behind, and for whom? Thanks for watching. If you found this video thought-provoking, if you have gotten thoughts of your own, drop a comment below. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that matters.